And welcome in, everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is Coast to Coast. And, of course, I am here with the Philly Sports Guy. We got Stat Guy. Jay is doing whatever Jay does. How you guys doing today?
Well, I'm definitely doing better than Jay, although not much. The Cowboys. How about them Cowboys?
Yeah.
Did you guys hear? Oh no, before did you guys hear what Dak Prescott really said, or like what was he was,
Yeah,
I guess allegedly, was caught saying.
Oh no, I made a short of it. It is plain as day.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't catch that. I only caught.
We have that short here. Let's start with that short.
I only caught
let's start the week off great, especially since it's Dallas week this week for the Eagles.
Yeah, I only caught what Jerry Jones said. So yeah, I would like to see this.
Yeah, so there's no sound to it because this was shot from across the arena, but we do have it. Let me bring this bad boy up here. And come on. All right. So now.
There we go.
Share the screen.
Technology early in the week.
Yeah, well, I wasn't prepared to share that, so
yeah, I'm sorry. But it's that time of year.
That it is. So here we go, and
yes,
it doesn't get any more plain than that.
Effing suck. We effing suck. That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. I mean, the implosion is official. I mean, we didn't get to even talk about the fact that Elliott wasn't allowed to even come play with them.
No.
Yeah, suspended. That's fun too. Like their team is awesome.
It's imploding. It is imploding.
McCarthy's not going to be allowed to hold tablets anymore.
Yeah, no, I saw him slam the. To be fair, I probably would have in that moment too.
I mean, it was his play call.
I understand, but I think at that point, just frustration of everything you do is wrong gets to you.
Well, and let's think about this in a real sense. I mean, this was all predetermined at the beginning of the year. They knew what they were getting into, and I mean, it's now coming to fruition. I thought this was all going to happen last year, so I'm a year behind.
See, I thought they were going to take a noticeable step back. I didn't think it was going to be just like fall off the planet.
Yeah, I thought they would be in playoff contention until like week 14, 15 and finish like 8 and 9, but I didn't think they'd kind of go like this.
I thought this was all going to happen last year. I said that they were a 6-11, a 7-10 team last year, and they surprised me. You know what I mean? So it was, and it was more because of unique play from a couple of people. I mean, they had what's his face going crazy in the beginning of the year with like 7 interceptions in 7 weeks or something like that.
Yeah,
and then he got hurt. And then the next guy came in and like all of a sudden got a bunch of interceptions. So the defense really carried them last year.
Well, and Dak had his best year when it came to not throwing interceptions, right? Because I just go into the year assuming he's a 10 interception guy, right? Like 10 to 15 without breaking a sweat. And I mean, he actually had a great year last year, which works out for him, right? Because it's a contract year. But I mean, there was a lot of things that went right for them last season. This year, I thought they were going to be that like fringe wild card team, right? Like in the conversation, not necessarily winning it, but in that conversation. But the way they're playing, it is hilarious.
I mean, you look at the next 3 games too: Eagles, Texans, Commanders. They're not going to be favored in any of those games, and chances are they're not going to win any of those 3 games.
They were only favored in 1 game throughout the rest of the season. Right now, last week.
Well, I think. Well, they have the Giants and Panthers yet on their schedule. I could see them being
the
favored.
Giants. They were favored for, and that was it. The Panthers, I think, was a pick 'em.
Yeah, and so then I mean, after those, and then after the Giants, you have the Bengals, Panthers, and then Bucks, Eagles, Commanders. The last 3 games. So right now, looking at their schedule, 2 wins rest of the way, maybe 3 if they can get one of those games from the Bengals or the Bucks.
Well, it could be 3. Well, they could definitely get the Bucks because of the injuries.
Yeah,
right?
the 3 wins. Three wins the rest of the way. You're a 6-11 team.
They could get 4 if week 18 the team they're playing sits everybody. Who do they have?
Well, but you got to think about this as well. I mean, I mean, the divisional games are still divisional games.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I you can't just assume that the Eagles are going to go in there and tear apart the Cowboys. It's just
no, of course.
I think that there is a piece of them that believes similar to the way I believe that where I feel that our season begins when we play the Giants, that their season will begin when they play us. Sure. So I feel like that they could use us as a springboard if, of course, they come out and they play and they win. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the easiest thing in the world for them to do because ultimately there is a lot that's got to get fixed.
Oh,
very, very quickly.
And like what you said too, like I didn't expect the nosedive to happen like as abruptly as it happened. I thought it would be kind of like as the season goes on, you would kind of see like everything start to fall into place. You can tell how valuable Dan Quinn was to this team last year because you look at that defense last year compared to this Mike Zimmer defense this year. That goes to show you that if Dan Quinn wasn't around last year, that Pegs is right. That probably happens last year if Dan Quinn's not there.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, and is Mike Zimmer, you want to put Mike Zimmer as the coach of this team after all is said and done?
All Jerry Jones wants is a yes. All Jerry Jones wants is a yes man, and Mike Zimmer would be just another yes man lined up behind McCarthy. That's all Jerry Jones wants.
And that's why I say yes, please. Let's let that happen. Let's let this dumpster fire burn.
So, if that's the case, if he wants a yes man, I would not be surprised to see Matt Rule come back and coach. Come back into the NFL.
I don't think Rule's getting paid too much at Nebraska to leave. I don't think Matt Rule will go back to the NFL.
But Nebraska has actually done a lot better this year under him, and I hear you. But I think that coaches always want to give it the second chance.
When it comes to Rule, though, I think he wants to wait to see what he has in Dylan Raiola, because Dylan Raiola was the top quarterback prospect in the nation that actually committed to Georgia. Ended up decommitting from Georgia to go to Nebraska, and he's been starting since day one as a true freshman. I think Matt Rule wants to ride him out the next 2 years to see what he can get out of Raiola while you kind of recruit and build the offense around his strengths, because Dylan Raiola is going to be probably the top pick of the draft when he goes out, if he plays the way he's played as his freshman year.
I mean, it depends on what he wants to do at the end of his career, because if you coach for the Cowboys – the media career is wide open. Mm-hmm. Like they just hand you money. They're like talk on TV. So if he wants something out, like if this opportunity comes up, it'd be tough to turn down.
Yeah.
Too young though to start that trend. Like my expectation is that, and the reason why I even place him, because I actually like Matt Rule. I really would be, if he went to the Cowboys, that would conflict me a little bit. You know what I mean? Sure. Just in terms of the way that I've watched his career kind of go from Temple.
To Baylor.
He made Temple like actually worthy of something.
And then he went to Baylor and rebuilt that Baylor program again. And
so I mean, he's the only hiccup that he's had up to this point is the Panthers, and he never really had a real shot at the Panthers.
No. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like he got hired and fired so quickly and never had a chance to actually have his own quarterback, his own running back, or his own team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think anybody that goes to the Panthers should be, tied to whatever their record looks like.
Oh, yeah.
Like, everybody that's coached there should have that as like a mulligan. Right? You're just like, okay, we understand you went to like one of the dumbest situations ever with an owner that may be the least patient human on the planet. We'll give you another shot.
But that's it. You got to also think about the shot that you're about to take.
No, for sure.
You don't want to go coach the Cleveland Browns. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to go do that. I mean, I wouldn't. I would also think that like the Raiders' job is not a very coveted job
Not right now, it's
because of
not.
who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like as you start that whole thought process, like, do you want to go? Are you trying to go to the AFC West or the NFC West and coach against those teams? You know what I mean? It's like,
Probably not.
and that's again kind of what I'm thinking. That puts you then in the center of the country, or and you have the East, but I don't know that I'm not taking the Jets job.
No.
Patriots job is actually pretty safe right now. I think that even as bad as they have been, that he's going to have 3 years because that's the type of guy that Kraft is. Yeah, he's going to give him the right amount of time.
Not just that, but
he's starting a rookie quarterback this year with really nothing next to him.
I mean, yeah, but like the biggest thing is even in losses, like you can see what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can not that there's really victories and losses, right? But there kind of is in your first year with a rookie guy. Like you can see some of these pieces coming together and you're like, okay, like you can kind of get the direction of it. Whereas, with the Cowboys, it's just, a nosediving plane into the ground. Like,
yeah, but I think I think that this was absolutely necessary to happen. Like, listen, I hate the Cowboys, you know what I mean? And that's always going to be. However, if I was Jerry, it's actually not the worst thing in the world to see them implode like this. Because at that point, you could almost just get rid of the entire thing and try to start fresh.
Except he's 80, what?
Doesn't matter how old he is. This is not a matter of his age. He doesn't need to.
The way that he wants to see it win today because he wants another ring before he dies.
He'll be around. He'll be around. It's not like if he was to give it up to his son that he ain't going to get himself a ring when they win the championship. If they were win it in 4 or 5 years and he's still alive,
you know. Yeah.
I still stand by what I said earlier this year that I think Deion Sanders will be coaching Dallas next year. Just the way he's turned Colorado around from where they were.
And as funny as that sounds, okay, so let's keep going down that road a little bit. Then do you let this all implode the way it's imploding and hope to get the first or second pick of the draft?
And then he brings in Shedeur Sanders. Yep. That's kind of why when you look at Colorado last year, they got off to a hot start. They started 3-0 and everyone was like talking about like just
they were ranked 24th.
Yep.
They were ranked 24th.
And then they won one game the rest of the year. You look at this year, they've been able to battle through adversity this year, and they're sitting at 6-2 now. They're bowl eligible for the first time since 2019. One more win gives them their first winning season since 2018, and they're still theoretically, they have to win out and they have to get some help, but they're still theoretically alive to play that Big 12 championship game. So in just 2 years, Deion Sanders has rebuilt that Colorado program from nothing and has turned them into a very solid team again.
Is it because Deion Sanders is a really good coach, or is it because his name is bringing up the higher recruits?
I think it's both. The recruits want to play for him, but he's one of those coaches that also has adapted to the way college football is now, where he coaches his team based on the strengths that he has in play. Versus Mike McCarthy is kind of that old school coach in Dallas that is still trying to coach his team like the NFL 10 years ago, where you could coach it a certain way, which you can't do that anymore. Like Deion Sanders would go to the NFL and be like, this is how the NFL is played now. This is what I need to have in place to be successful.
Yeah.
Like I compare him to Jim Harbaugh, because you look at Jim Harbaugh, where everywhere Jim Harbaugh has gone, he's basically had instant success in year one. Goes to the Chargers this year. He's had instant success.
I don't know that it's instant success. I can't agree with that right now with the Chargers. I mean, I know that they've won, but I can't say. I mean, I think that they were a pretty good team, and I think if you had a better X's and O's guys last year, interestingly enough, that was Kellen Moore, that you might have done a little bit better. Obviously, their defense stunk last year, and that was they were scoring points. They weren't able to stop anybody from scoring.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there was a pretty good run last year where they were putting up 400 yards a game.
Yeah,
right.
And so, if Deion Sanders doesn't get the job, the other college coach that I could see Jerry Jones take a swing at is Dan Lanning in Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
he's 36, 37.
that's where I think that he, if he wants more of a yes man, not going to get that with him.
True.
And that's where I kind of think, uh, no, I don't foresee that. I would see more, like I said, I'd see more of Matt Rule, because I could see him being more manipulated to be the yes man, not necessarily like a come right out and be like, hey, everything I say goes and you're just a puppet for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it goes a little bit beyond that, you know what I mean? But I think in Oregon, after you win a national championship, and he hasn't won one yet over in Oregon, he's been close a couple of times.
Yep.
This is probably their best shot, and I still think it's going to have to you're going to have to go through Georgia. Alabama, I think, is out of it now. I think it's there. You don't really have anybody else that's, this was week 9. So week 9 was all the upset weeks, and like there was 9, 10, 11. There was 2 11s, by the way. I don't know how that even worked. That both got knocked off.
Yeah.
Both anybody who was number 11 got knocked off this week. Including a number 10, like everybody got upset this week. So you have a lot of that kind of going on. I wouldn't be surprised also that guy from South Carolina, the coach in South Carolina, also kind of looks like Dave Wannstedt. Just in the looks and appearance. I watched the game on Friday night when they won, and it was, or maybe it was Saturday. I guess it was South Carolina against Clemson.
Texas A&M.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously, it was like the first time that they had won like a double-digit score against a top 10 opponent ever in their career and stuff like that. That guy, when you look at some of the stats of that coach, he's actually done really well there.
Yeah, Beamer.
And this right here, this should have happened last year. Like, I don't know why it took until now this year. Dennis Allen should have been fired last year.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that the Saints are realizing now too, and Michael Thomas is starting to open his mouth a little bit now that he's not playing, and he can kind of do that and not get in trouble at this point. Derek Carr is getting his wide receivers killed right now. Like Chris Olave almost died over the middle yesterday when Derek Carr threw that ball into triple coverage.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Thomas hates Carr though. So
no, I know that, but I'm just saying, like, you look at the injuries this year just by the Saints wide receivers, and a lot of it is Derek Carr basically doing the same thing that happened to Chris Olave last year, where you're literally leading him into a safety coming over the middle and just getting him crushed over the middle.
So
yeah, I didn't see this one yet. I didn't see that everybody in Vegas got fired.
Yeah, Luke Getsy got fired. Luke Getsy got fired after the game ended last night. Like, he didn't even leave the facility with the team. They were on the road yesterday, so he didn't even get on the plane with the team. Like, they fired Luke Getsy at the stadium yesterday, and then when the plane landed back in Vegas, then they fired like 6 or 7 more offensive coaches.
Crazy.
Speaking of firing, this is actually probably a really good segue into what I got. So I'll get into Barkley later. Thank God that we have Barkley on the Eagles right now, because I would be willing to bet that if you take Barkley off of this team, that the Eagles right now would be a 3-5 team.
Probably.
So I mean, realistically, you have the argument to say that because of Barkley, that's the reason why that there's 6-2, but they could be 7-1 had he likes to catch, if he caught balls that hit him directly in the hands, but. Yeah, well, because he missed another one yesterday that hit him directly in the hands, and it's and I get it, but it is what it is. I'm not worried about Barkley. I'm not talking bad about Barkley. I am going to talk bad about the play calling about the Eagles. I tell you, I appreciate that you folding in on me direct. Last night was so atrocious on the games that Nick Sirianni is playing, with the extra point tries and some of the play calling and stuff like that. First off, we have not had any type of screenplay that has worked in the last 3 or 4 years. So stop calling it. It's not working. It always goes for -2 yards. Every time you call it, goes for -2 yards. But beyond that, at the end of the half, when we finally score a touchdown, and we're going to play a game with this. Hold on, we're going to line up like we're going to go for two, but we're not going to go for two. We're going to try to get them offside so that we can really get to the 1 yard line and try our tush push, which did not work 3 different times yesterday. And the reason why it didn't work is because we're not getting low enough. That you could tell as they were lining up that this isn't going to work because they're going to wind up getting below us, and that's how the whole tush push works. Whoever's on the bottom wins. And yesterday, the Jaguars were on the bottom, but that's beside the point. The Eagles playing games with the kicking game. We have one of the best kickers in the league. We left 8 points, 11, which I'm not even going to count the 3 that he missed from the 56-yarder because he didn't get a chance to really kick all damn game long, because every time you want to score a touchdown, you want to play this game for going for 2. It almost cost us the game. In fact, on a 4th and 3, you're going for it when we're up by 6 points. Go kick the field goal and get up by 9 points. Changes the whole game plan for the Jaguars. Makes them have to score twice. But no, you decided not to do that. You decided to play games and try to go for 2. Why? Why go for 2 for any reason? Now, of course, at the end of the game, when we're only up by 5, you got to go for 2 because you want to try to make it 7. And, of course, we missed that too. You know what I mean? So it's been ridiculous. I tell you, I don't know what you're doing, Nick Sirianni, but you need to figure it out. Put the points on the board. Yeah, you had the problem with taking the 0 off the board initially without kicking these field goals. There's 4th and 3. I don't know where the book on the analytics says every time it's 4th and 3 and you only got 25 yards to go, we got to go for it. I don't want to see it anymore. I'm tired of it. You should have learned from your mistakes. You're not learning, and that's the reason why people are calling for your head. They won last night in spite of you, not because of you. And when you cost this team a game, that game's going to be very important this year. Especially since we're going to wind up having to go to Detroit. Right now, we're neck and neck with them. Obviously, they got the lead because they've only got 1 loss. But we're neck and neck. It's going to wind up that we're going to have to go to Detroit for the NFC Championship game. And I don't see us winning that game right now because of the stupid play calling that you are doing. You need to put those points on the board. I don't care whatever you think the analytics are saying. You got the game in front of you, and you need to measure that. You don't need to measure what the book is saying because the book ain't playing the game. You're playing the game. And these are the mistakes that are going to cost us a game. And when it costs us that game, it's going to cost us big.
Sadly,
hey, Nick Sirianni.
I have a very similar issue here in Seattle.
I mean,
we had a very easy chance to kind of really get a solid lead, and instead we go for this half yard with the worst offensive line in the league. They haven't been able to win that yard all season. We can't get any push from this offensive line on any time we've needed 1 yard or it's an obvious running situation. Our guys get blown off the line. We decide to run it twice, turn it over on downs rather than kick the field goal and, extend the lead. So I'm with you. There's some very real coaching issues. I understand the analytics say that most of the time you win, but you also have to understand what your team is and what your team can't do. And the Seahawks in this scenario cannot get that yard. They get blown 2 yards off the ball every time it's an obvious running play.
And the thing is, you can blame Dan Campbell for this because Dan Campbell is the poster child for not kicking field goals, going for it on 4th down whenever the hell he feels like it. But guess what? It works for Dan Campbell. It's not going to work for anybody else.
You could go further back. You could actually blame it on the coach who was coaching across the field from us last night.
Peterson,
Doug Peterson, because he literally won a Super Bowl by doing that. And he was kind of the first one who was going for it on 4th down all the time. Like he went for it on 4th down. I think it was like that year, somewhere around like 26% of the time. It was like a ridiculous number. And he made it like 70% of that 26%. You know what I mean? So we had a really great 4th down conversion rate. And that's what helped propel us to win a Super Bowl where, think about that 4th down play in the Super Bowl. That is immortalized forever, the Philly. I mean, that is like the epitome of every other coach now doing this. And I have a problem when you see the scoreboard and we are up by 6 points and we got a 4th and 3 and we're 25 yards away. It's not like we're right there on the doorstep and they got to travel 97 yards. They only got to go 75 yards. And not for nothing. I mean, our defense in the first half, we held them to 36 yards. 36 yards in the first half. Total.
Yeah.
And to do those dumb mistakes, to make those dumb calls, because that's what I call them now. They're dumb. To not go up by 2 scores, to purposely not go up by 2 scores is unfathomable when you're in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is I hate leaving points off the board, right? Like if you have a scenario where you can put it up, especially like this week, because it was a struggle to get anything going. Don't leave points off the board when you can extend a lead and make it so that it's more than a score. And like, it doesn't make sense. I hate that it has kind of switched over to, we have to go for it on 4th down every time. You know what wins games? Points. It's weird. And sometimes if you just kick a lot of field goals, you can still win the damn game.
Yeah. The funny thing was, I don't know if you guys watched that Detroit Green Bay game yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Two of the Lions 3 touchdowns. So their second touchdown came on like a pick 6 with like 30 seconds left in the first half on a play that Jordan Love never should have did anyways. But the other 2 touchdowns the Lions had, 4th and 8 from the Packer 13, threw a touchdown pass to St. Brown in the corner. And then the other one was 4th and 3 from the Packer 30, and Jahmyr Gibbs had a 30-yard touchdown run. So both of the Lions' touchdowns came on basically field goal situations, but he's like, nope, we'll go for it on 4th down, and it worked.
Well, I think that we had the one, I think it was only 3rd down, when Barkley ran around the end for his second touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I'm not sure if that was on 3rd or 4th down, but it enraged me. It enraged me. How is it that I can see this and you guys can't? You guys are getting paid lots of money. I got to imagine, and I'm sure the Philadelphia media is going to be all over Nick Sirianni about this. This is, and listen, my blood pressure is fine. This is very frustrating to me. This is very frustrating. Because this team is good enough to make a real run.
Sure.
To the Super Bowl. I don't know that they have enough talent, as funny as that sounds, because they have to go up into Detroit. And right now, we have to go through Detroit to get there. I understand, Frankie, that yes, Washington right now has got the lead and that they're doing their thing. They took care of the Giants yesterday. We're going to find out here in 2 weeks on a Thursday night. Interestingly enough, I think the Thursday night helps the Eagles here in comparison, because that Washington's got to travel here, and it's going to be a day where I get to hold the flag on the field. So I'm going to actually be on the field, for that game. That being said, you have to make correct decisions when games are on the line. The fact that we had to have an interception at the last play of the game just about to be able to stop them from scoring, because had they scored, they win.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. I mean, am I the only one? First off, I know I'm not the only one because there were 70,000 other fans saying the exact same thing, that It was ridiculous that you didn't kick the field goal and go up by 9.
Yeah.
They can't score a 9-point touchdown.
That's right.
Impossible.
Yeah, no, and the thing with 4th downs is it's not like I'm mad that they go for them. But, and the analytics, sure, it supports it. But you're watching the game in real time. If you're not getting the yard all day, just embrace the fact you're not getting that yard all day and take the points. Mm-hmm. Like, I get that if you thumb through your book over the course of a season, maybe it makes sense. But you have to actually look at the flow of the game that you're currently in, because analytics is great over a period of time. It doesn't give you anything in the moment. So in the moment, you got to actually feel what's happening to your team and watch the watch the film of it, because you got your your tablets in front of you, and be like, hey, you know what? We're getting blown off the damn ball all day. Maybe this 1 yard rush ain't it. So
and
there's
looking. Obviously, the Eagles are fourth in fourth down conversions. They have actually. There have been in total. I want to see all. Why is this fucking play games like this with the stats? I was trying to find out the exact. Yeah, StatMuse only wants to show me the top 25. I'd have to pay to get the other 8 and get the whole what the whole NFL is doing. Which is ridiculous.
That's the worst thing about all of those, whether it's StatMuse or it's Pro Football Focus. They're like, oh, here's the top one, and if you actually want to see the list that you're looking for, you got to pay us $30 a month. It's like, man, get bent on that.
Yeah. So,
and this frustration is brought to you in part by True Fusion Gym. Right here in the Pacific Northwest, use a QR code on the screen, free 5-day pass at any of the 3 locations, Bellevue, Ballard, and University Village. Pilates, boot camp, yoga, bar, hot rooms, and more. Find your edge at True Fusion Gym. And of course, if you are into sports betting, you can bet right alongside us here at Coast to Coast using the QR code on the screen with Bet us 125% deposit bonus for your first 3 deposits. There is a 10% bet guarantee if you happen to lose. Restrictions do apply, but you can bet right alongside us with that QR code on the screen.
Yeah, as of right now, they have Philadelphia sitting at 7th in the NFL in fourth down conversion at a 64% success rate, which is actually better than Detroit at 58%. Detroit,
and interestingly enough, both the Commanders and the Bills between them have 20 fourth down conversions, and they're both operating at 100%.
Yep. Buffalo's 12 for 12. Washington is 8 for 8.
Yeah, which is fine. But if you look at it during the game and you're getting smoked in situations like that, you'd be like, hey, you know what? Maybe we take some points.
The worst in the league is the Miami Dolphins.
Yep, at 18.75%, and then Carolina is actually at 27%, the next worst. So there's actually a big gap between Miami and Carolina.
Yeah, but Carolina's also done it 18 times and it connected 5, 16 times connected 3. Both stink. But ultimately, it looks like that there is. I'd be willing to bet that fourth down conversions are probably at about 60%. Looking at them all, I mean, there's a lot more. There's a lot more that have.
Because 21 teams are at least at 50% or better, and 26 teams are at least at 42%. So I mean,
right. You got all the way to the 49ers at 3-7, which is really not enough to actually make the mark.
Yeah.
The Dallas Cowboys have 6 out of 17.
Yeah.
But the teams that are missing are, it's really just the bottom 2, the Dolphins and the Panthers. Like that coach keep going for it on fourth down. I mean, either one of those coaches, like, yo, dude, maybe you should just punt.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I sort of get it from the Dolphins side because they can't stop anybody anyway. So you got to try and keep your offense on the field.
Well, either way, the Dolphins didn't do very well this week, did they?
No. Dolphins only lost 30-27 to Buffalo on a 61-yard field goal. So I mean, they played well with Tua back under center.
Okay, I didn't realize it was a 61-yarder that won the game.
Yeah, 61-yarder that won the game after the Dolphins tied it with just under 3 minutes left, I think.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay, well then, I mean, good for them. Which I guess brings us to who's going to be in the playoffs and who's not. Let's play contender or pretender.
Yep.
Let's start with the AFC since the NFC is all of our teams anyway. So.
All right. I mean, KC, it seems like an obvious contender until somebody can take them down.
So interestingly enough,
they're not playing great, but they're winning.
Yeah, and it's you wonder how much the refs got to play into that, but it's funny. One of the things that I didn't mention was on this Friday, I wound up changing everything I had to do, and I wound up going to the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony, where Andre Reed was there, and there was another Buffalo Bill who back in the 80s also was inducted. Let me just get his name real fast. So there were a lot of Jim Braxton, a lot of Buffalo Bills fans that were there. And the first thing I said to them, I said, I'd love to have you guys in the Super Bowl and play against the Eagles. You know what I mean? I think that would be amazing. You guys got to beat Kansas City when it matters.
Yeah.
That's the problem. You can't beat Kansas City when it matters. And that's what they said. Well, we can win in the regular season. I says, yeah, but nobody cares.
Yeah, it doesn't matter when it comes to the postseason. Whole new season starts. Mm-hmm. And Joe, you're probably right. Denver probably doesn't make the playoffs, but we only use teams with winning records because you can't even pretend like you're a contender if you don't have a winning record.
I think Denver does make the playoffs, actually. I don't say that they're a contender.
No, I think yesterday showed that they're definitely not a contender.
But I think they make the playoffs.
I mean, if it were to shut down right now, this would be your group.
The Denver and the Chargers on this list to me are the bubble teams right now, just because if Cincinnati gets on one of those runs that they typically get on, I think Cincinnati can sneak in and get one of those last two seeds.
I agree with that.
Which would take one of those two out, because right now Cincinnati's 4-5, but they started the year 1-5. So they've won 3 in a row now, and they're starting to kind of play like.
Hold on. They can't have won 4 in a row.
3 in a row.
Cincinnati?
Yeah, they're 4-5. They started like.
We beat them last week.
Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah. Well, either way, they started like 1-4 then or whatever, but now they're 4-5. So it's like now they're starting to kind of get into that rhythm that you.
Yeah, but you got to think of the teams that they beat. All right, and just because I know who they were, they beat Cleveland.
Yep.
They beat the Giants.
Yep.
And now they just beat the Raiders.
Yep.
So I mean, not the cream of the crop there.
No, but you still got to play who's on your schedule, and if they have like an easy crop, I don't have the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, no, they got to play the Steelers twice, I believe. They got to play the Ravens one more time.
That's on Thursday night this week too. The Ravens.
Yeah, so it's like I think that they're going to have a really challenged time.
What they have the rest of the way, they have the Bengals or they have the Ravens next.
Yep.
The Chargers.
Yep.
The Steelers. Yep. The Cowboys, which that who knows what that's going to be. The Titans is probably an easier win.
Yep.
The Browns, tough to say. The Broncos and the Steelers again. So they don't exactly have an awesome path.
They have the Chargers and the Broncos on that list where if they win both of those games, that could ultimately determine who gets in, because I see them beating the Titans. I see them beating the Browns. I see them beating the Cowboys. So that's 3 wins. That puts them at 7, 8, 9. If they can,
there's a chance that they could split the Steelers.
Yep. So I mean,
just because it is.
Yep. So you're looking at 9 wins, maybe 10, and if they get to that 9-10, that's probably enough to get the 7 seed in the AFC, which probably bumps one of those 2 teams.
In the AFC, it's possible that 9 could win it. Actually, it's possible that an 8-win team could make a wild card.
Yeah,
it is possible. I think in the AFC, NFC, you're going to need 10 wins. You got to get 10 wins to get in the NFC.
Yeah, I think on this list here, I think 5 teams are pretty much a guarantee to get in right now, and I think the Chargers.
So what you have right now. The Bills is 7-2.
They're a contender. They've shown, even with like the weapons they have now, they're a better team now than what they were when they had Stephon Diggs and all those other pieces.
Of course. And then you have KC 7-0. They play tonight, right? You have the Steelers at 6-2, the Ravens at 6-3, the Texans at 6-3. The only teams that are even questionable are the Chargers and Broncos, and they still have, 2 games over the next teams, because the rest of them are all 3-win. I with the exception of 1 4-4 team.
Broncos are 5-4 and the Bengals are 4-5. So like that's really the gap. The Chargers having that third loss helps them out a little bit.
No, but that's what I mean is
because the culture also in that mix with 4-5, even though they lost yesterday as well. I mean they're 4-5, and that's I trust Steichen to actually coach them up enough.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to have a strong enough group behind him? I mean, obviously trying to win with Flacco is going to be hard. You know what I mean? You saw exactly how much mobility he had, which was 0. So you got to make sure that you give max protect. And you got to play that way, max protect the entire time, because he's not able to even roll out. He felt uncomfortable just stepping up in the pocket.
Exactly.
So I think you're going to run into a problem.
And when it comes to this AFC list too, I think realistically the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens are the only contenders, just because Houston is so badly injured right now that I think those injuries are catching up to them, where they're fortunate to be in a weak enough division where they're going to win their division, but missing some of the pieces that they have, I think, is going to hurt them from making a deep playoff run. So I would say the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens are really the only three contenders in the AFC right now.
I don't know. I can't discount the Steelers here because they're starting to actually score some points. The defense has been elite anyway, right? So now that you're finally starting to score some points, I can't say that they're not a contender. Are they a favorite? I don't think so. But are they a contender? I mean, I think you have to acknowledge the fact that, they find ways to win.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going to lead to, is that we are dismissing the Steelers a little bit because they weren't supposed to have a really good season.
They weren't.
And they are having a good season in spite of everybody still not believing in them. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's the chip on their shoulder that he's using. Like, hey, nobody believes that you can do anything, so let's keep proving them wrong. It's the us against the world mentality. And I tell you, if there's any coach that's able to pull that off, it's definitely, that coach there, the Steelers. I mean, he's just
no question.
Every time we keep thinking that he might be done and this might be the year he doesn't go 500, well, that tells us how much we don't know.
Yeah, and right. The next 4 weeks are going to go a long ways for the Chiefs because they have Tampa Bay tonight, which in my opinion is really a must-win game for Tampa to kind of keep pace with Atlanta.
They don't have any receivers, man. Tampa's going to lose this game.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying, it's still a must-win game for Tampa.
No. You're going to watch their tight end score 3 touchdowns.
Cade Otton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's going to – I think, first off, the Chiefs give up the most tight end receiving yards in general.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And he's on my fantasy team, so I need him.
And then after the Bucks, you get the Broncos, which the Broncos always play the Chiefs tough because it's a division game.
No, of course.
And then after that, Kansas City goes to Buffalo, which will be a huge game in the AFC in terms of standings.
Yep.
If the Chiefs get through these next 3 games, 3-0, then they get the Panthers, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Browns, the next 4. Theoretically, if the Chiefs go to 10-0, they're realistically going to have a 4-game lead in the AFC because they would have the tiebreaker over both Buffalo and Baltimore, who would both have 3 losses. Kansas City would be undefeated, so they would have a 4-game lead with essentially 5 games left. And at that point, you're pretty much packing it in Kansas City's got the 1 seed. Playoffs got to go through Kansas City again. And is that ultimately going to be too much for both the Ravens and Bills to overcome?
At what point, though, once that occurs, at what point do you start to have the thought process of going undefeated all season long? Because that starts to become a different type of distraction for you.
If they get through the next 3 games and go 10-0, then you have the Panthers and Raiders, which should be pretty much given wins. That puts you at 12-0. Then you have that Chargers game. That'll be a tough game against the Chargers just because of the Chargers will be battling for that wild card spot.
Yep.
You go 13-0. Browns should put you at 14-0. Then your last 3 games of the year are the Texans, the Steelers, and the Broncos. That is not an easy finish to the season, but if you're sitting at 14-0, you're thinking about going undefeated, and you're not thinking about resting Mahomes. You're not thinking about resting Kelsey. You're thinking about trying to be that first team in NFL history to have a 17-0 regular season because it's never been done on a 17-game schedule. Sure. You're thinking about that as soon as you get through this next – even if you get through these next 3 games at 10-0, you're starting to think about it at that point where it's we're 10-0. Now we should be 12-0. Now we should be this when you're looking at who you're playing. And I think after these next 3 games, the Chiefs are going to start thinking about, hey, can we run this table and get to 17-0?
Yeah, I think they I don't think they get past the Bills, honestly. I think the Bills will probably be their first loss.
Yeah, and I think if anybody has any hope of knocking the Chiefs off in the playoffs, I think Buffalo needs to beat Kansas City because if you're trailing Kansas City by basically 4 games with 5 games left, you're not catching them in terms of getting that number 1 seed. You need Buffalo to win that game to make things a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think if Buffalo beats them, I think it's like a college thing that the first loss you have a letdown the next week too.
Yep.
You know, so it's possible that you go from one loss to two losses
Yeah.
right away.
And then everything's wide open in the AFC versus a 10-0 team. Now you have the 3-game advantage in the standings plus the tiebreaker over both Baltimore and Buffalo. You might as well just pencil Kansas City in for the 1 seed after week 11.
Right. Understood. Which brings us now to the NFC.
Here we go. So, I mean, now obviously the Cards are only on here because they're the division leader. They actually have a winning record.
They're playing better than I think anyone thought they would.
Well, that's the thing, is that's what makes them interesting for this list, is I don't know that you could call them either way. I mean,
I think you can call them a pretender for now, but if they keep this up for another 2-3 weeks, then you got to start looking at it like maybe this Cardinals team is better than we thought they were.
I mean, they're already better than we thought they were. Like that's the thing, is they're playing a really scrappy brand of football that makes you a contender week in and week out. Does it make you a Super Bowl contender? Probably not. I mean, honestly, I think the Lions are
I think, are the class of the NFC right now.
But at this point, from what we've watched all season, you can't discount the Cards. No. And so they're kind of that Steelers team for you, right? Where you're just like, ooh, that's they're going to be a tougher out than you thought. And Joe, we did leave the Niners out because we only used teams that had winning records, and the Niners are 4-4.
I think on this list, I think the Lions are a contender. I think Philly is a contender.
Yep.
I think Washington's proven to be a contender because of how they played against Baltimore.
Sure.
Atlanta, I think, is a contender for the division, but I'm not going to put them as like a contender for the Super Bowl. I still think they're a little too young to make a deep playoff run. If they get a home playoff game, I think they win the home game and then lose after that.
So the thing that's funny is they are playing better than you would think. Like they're 6-3.
Yeah.
But remember, they were 1-2 at the beginning of the year. They've gone 5-1 in their last 6. So I mean, they are playing, better football than people are giving them credit for.
I think the Packers are a pretender right now because if you look at their record, they're 6-3.
Okay.
Their 3 losses came against Philadelphia, Minnesota, and Detroit. Basically 3 of the best teams in the NFC. And then they beat Houston on a last-second field goal. So when Green Bay has played good teams, they have shit the bed completely and have not shown up. And then 3 of their 6 wins, like their 6 wins have come against teams they should beat. But 3 of those 6 wins were because of Malik Willis and not Jordan Love. So when Jordan Love starts, they are 3-3. When Malik Willis starts, they're 3-0. And that's kind of where we don't really know how good this Packer team is because they've lost to basically every good team they faced minus Houston. And they've actually played better with Malik Willis than they've had with Jordan Love.
But if going off of last year, they weren't even in contention at week 9.
Nope.
And wound up having a good back half of the season and went on that run.
Exactly.
It becomes a matter of the buy-in. Like who's buying in? Is the running game going to start for them? Because the running game has really been non-existent. It's all been passing for them right now.
The Packers running game actually has been what's carried them lately because Josh Jacobs is 3rd in the NFL in rushing. Like the running game has saved their ass this year.
Right. But that's exactly it. When Love is out there, they don't rely on the running game. They go more to the passing game. And I didn't get to see any of the game, but I got to imagine that when you are playing Detroit, you need long, sustaining drives to keep the offense off the field.
Yesterday, it was pouring rain. They had 2 inches of rain yesterday during that game in Green Bay.
That's awesome.
And yet they threw the ball 40 times. And Josh Jacobs had 13 carries. He averaged 7 yards a carry. Why the hell did you not pound him that ball more when you're averaging 7 yards a carry?
Because you were down.
Yeah. But even then, like Detroit yesterday with Jared Goff threw the ball 22 times for 145 yards. So he basically just, if you needed 4 yards, he'd throw the ball 5 yards and get what you had to get. The Lions ran the ball 32 times and were only averaging 4 yards a carry. So it's not like they were getting tons of yards. It's just that the Packers gave up on the run too quick because they fell behind by 2 touchdowns at halftime. But when it's pouring rain the way it is, and you have a guy that's third in the NFL in rushing, you can't stop giving him the ball when he's averaging 7 yards a carry. You have to ride him as long as you can ride him.
Sure you can. You watch the Ravens do that in all 3 of their losses. Just don't hand it to the running back. It's fine.
And I'm kind of on the same boat with Minnesota as I am with Green Bay, where can they be contenders? Yes, because they've proven they can play with the Lions. They've proven that they can play with some of the good teams in the NFL. But when they beat the 49ers didn't have McCaffrey. When they beat the Texans didn't have Joe Mixon. So do they beat Houston or San Francisco if McCaffrey and Mixon play? Nobody knows. And even last night during the Colts, the old Sam Darnold that nobody wants to see showed up in the first half because he completely sucked in the first half. But then the second half, this year's version of Sam Darnold shows up in the second half, and Minnesota plays extremely well in the second half. They got to get rid of this. They are the number 1 offense in the NFL in the first half, but they are 30th in offense in the second half. Like, for some reason, Minnesota usually gets off to a really fast start where they have like a 10, 12-point lead at halftime, and they have almost 20 points at the half. But then in the second half, like, they go away from what worked in the first half, and they let everybody back in the game. They got to get away from that and just start playing 60 minutes of complete football. And until they do that, I can't put them as a contender yet, because if you only play one half of good football in the playoffs, you're screwed.
You will lose that game. There is no doubt.
More than often.
Yeah. You're certainly not winning 4 games in a row that way.
No, and like I think this list is the same thing as the AFC. I think on this list, 5 teams I think are penciled in to be in the playoffs at this point: Detroit, Atlanta, Washington, Minnesota, and Philly. I think are pretty much guaranteed to get in. Arizona is going to depend on if San Francisco can put it together. It's going to depend on whoever wants to win 9 games in the NFC West. That's going to be one of the teams. In Green Bay, I think, given where they are in the standings, I think they're pretty much a guaranteed to get in because they're sitting at 6-3. Yep. But if they don't start, they have 1 more game against the Vikings, 1 more game against Detroit, 2 games against the Bears, and they're sitting at 0-2 in their division right now. If Green Bay can't figure out a way to beat teams that are either in playoff conversation or teams that have a winning record, Green Bay is going to play themselves out.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, though, Green Bay has also got, like, don't they also play, like, they're playing the South, right? Like, they don't have...
Right, the NFC West.
So right now the Packers have the Bears next week at Chicago, which should they win, yes, but it's still a division game, and you never know what you're going to get.
For sure.
Then you get San Francisco, which is Packers kryptonite. It doesn't matter when they play San Francisco, where they play San Francisco. They just can't figure out a way to beat San Francisco. Then they play the Dolphins on Thanksgiving in Lambeau, which should be a win.
Yep.
And then they get the Lions at Detroit. They go to Seattle in back-to-back weeks. That's not going to be an easy 2-game stretch. Then they get the Saints at home, who they should beat, but then they finish up with the Packers and the Vikings and Bears. So it's not like they have an easy schedule the rest of the way. There's 4 games on there where you're like, Vikings playoff contender, Lions playoff contender, Seahawks playoff contender, and 49ers playoff contender. Do they go 1-3? Do they go 0-4? Do they go 2-2? If they can't figure out a way to beat teams that are currently in the playoff picture, they're not going to play themselves into the playoffs. They're going to play themselves out, or basically a one-and-done team.
Well, and historically, they don't play great in Seattle. And, of course, that game is in Seattle. So if it was a home game for them, I would say they probably win.
Like, they don't have a tough schedule when you're looking at, like, overall wins and loss records. But when you're looking at, like, how many teams are either battling for the playoffs or are currently in the playoff picture, it's a very tough schedule for the Packers the rest of the way, where they haven't proven yet that they can beat good teams.
Yeah.
So looking at these 7 and thinking about who is left in the NFC, do we only really see the potential of maybe the 49ers? And I guess you could give maybe a slight to Tampa Bay as possible.
I have another team.
Who?
Rams.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams.
Look at how the Rams have looked since Kupp and Nakua have come back. Like, all of a sudden, the Rams look like a good football team.
Yeah, but the problem I have with the Rams is always going to be their issue right now, since they've lost the main part of their defense, when he retired, that they don't keep people out of the end zone. I think that you had an anemic offense that scored 20 points with Seattle yesterday. And,
One of them was a pick six.
Yeah.
So their offense actually really didn't do much. Obviously they also lost Puka halfway through the game. So.
Yeah. But like with the Rams though too, like they can score if Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are healthy. And they're starting to show that too, because Kyren Williams is a running back that nobody really talks about. And Kyren Williams is a good running back, but even the Rams' upcoming schedule.
He's good. He's really good.
Even the Rams' upcoming schedule.
The thing with the Rams is they have no depth.
Yeah.
So if anybody gets hurt, it's a wrap. If they stay healthy, they are a very competitive team.
Yeah, at the Rams' upcoming schedule, you have the Dolphins on Monday night in Los Angeles, and then you follow that up with the Patriots. Probably 2 wins right there, or it should at least be 2 wins, because Miami's defense is terrible. And I don't think the Patriots can score enough points to keep up with the Rams.
And then you have the real test when the Eagles come out there.
Yep, and then after that,
the Eagles have been your kryptonite at the Rams, because every time the Eagles play the Rams beat the Rams.
So then you're 6-5, let's say. After that, they have the Saints, probably 7-5, and then you have the Bills, probably 7-6, but then you have the 49ers, a team that Sean McVay typically has a lot of success against, because that's really the one team that Kyle Shanahan has historically struggled to beat is the Rams. 8-6, 8-5. Then you get the Jets, 9 wins, and then you finish up with the Cardinals and Seahawks. Can they get to 10 wins? There is a path where the Rams can get to that 9 or 10 win mark and play themselves into that final wildcard spot, or even the division, depending on how the rest of the division plays out.
They can claw their way out that way. I mean, as long as they can stay healthy, that's the biggest thing with the Rams. There's just no depth. So if their starters stay healthy, it's a very competitive team. As soon as any of them drop out, it's a wrap.
Because you saw that last year too, when Nacua and Cooper Kupp were healthy and both on the field at the same time. The Rams were 4-1 when both of them were on the field at the same time. When one of them was off of the field, they were 3-9? Because I think they were 7-10 last year. They were 3-9 when one of those 2 guys was off on injury last year. And now this year, with both of those guys on the field at the same time, the Rams are 3-0. They're 1-4 when one of those guys are hurt. So as long as Nacua and Kupp are on the field at the same time, the Rams are not a team that a lot of these NFC teams should overlook, because they've proven when both of those guys are on the field at the same time that they can win games.
Yeah. That being said, that gets us to the top of the hour. If you've been watching along with us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. And, of course, if you're watching on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. Other than that, see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy Monday Night Football.
Take care.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows, giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live